I wanted to tell the story about this Italian guy that I had met in random video chat online. We had a sort of interesting relationship, and he was a documentary filmmaker. What happened was I didn't really have a form to put the story in. I'm not sure how it happened, but at some point I just kind of stumbled upon this website, Extra Normal. The logo's in the corner, on the bottom left-hand corner of the film, and you see it almost the whole time. But I stumbled upon it, and on the website it says, if you can type, you can make a movie. And because my whole kind of like story came from my typing with this person, I thought that would be perfect. So essentially what you can do is you can pick your background and you pick your little characters and you can put them in little outfits and whatnot. So all of the animation that you see is totally ready-made.
I like your teeth.
Extra Normal on the website, it also says there's been 11 million films made, and I thought, okay, well then mine will be the 11 millionth and one, and it's just a drop in the bucket. So there's nothing spectacular about my form because it's totally banal and everyone's using it and it's all over YouTube, etc.
Want to say my best thing?
I chose it specifically to have a modest form. I mean, ultimately, the piece is not made online because it's so long, and I have titles and subtitles and animation and the soundtrack and everything, which I couldn't do on the website, but that's where it came from, was that I wanted to have something just very, very simple and accessible. I've always done that in my work. I've always used really just banal pop things like Microsoft Word icon or using PowerPoint to make a piece, things that are just readily available and kind of user-friendly or whatever.
Show me something of interesting.
It's totally remarkable that you can have this very, very human story, or that the viewer or audience can have an experience that's quite intimate and tender, despite the fact that it's like two computer voices.
I am not exactly sure what you are asking, but I want to tell you something strange.
The viewer's never seeing what's really happening, so you're already kind of like projecting into the situation, which is already what's happening in the real conversation, because you have to project, you're projecting into it to make it come to life. And then that's another reason why I chose the green screen too, is because it's kind of like they are in no place. There is, where they come together is this place that doesn't exist. How do you translate that sort of like world that is beneath these kind of like, God, like what's that, all that other stuff? And I mean, the one person who can do that is David Foster Wallace. I mean, better than anybody. And he comes up in the film quite a bit, and partially because one of the characters' filmmaker is one of the characters' father is a filmmaker who makes avant-garde films, and that's the same in Infinite Jest, but also because one of the kind of persistent themes in David Foster Wallace is this idea of paying attention and being paid attention to. What is it to actually engage with somebody?
This is one annoying trap of consciousness. The problem of one being the center of the universe. It's really a persistent sensation.
That's philosophical.
So early on, I did a lot of writing and I did exhibitions. I did the two things alongside each other. And at a certain point, it just got to be too much to do the writing because I was doing a lot of exhibitions, and I also teach, and I have a kid. And so my friends were kind of bugging me that I didn't give as much kind of commitment or energy to writing. Like if they asked me to write for their journal, and I would say, no, I can't, I'm just too overwhelmed. And it was like, well, why do you always say yes to the gallery show and no to a writing project? Partially because, I mean, it's really hard to do both of those things at the same time. But from this kind of persistent nagging to get me to start writing again or contributing texts, I became extremely self-conscious and anxious about the fact that I could no longer write, that I just didn't have that space to write in, that I didn't, it's like to write you need days and days to just be able to like pick up a book and let things kind of like, float around, and I didn't have that time. And so I got really, really freaked out and thinking like, oh, I've lost language. I don't have the ability to like deal with anything discursively or blah, blah, blah. And so, so I'm like really stressed out, and I'm working in the university, and I'm making shows, and I discovered this like fantastic time-killing activity on the internet, and like a nice stress relief, etc. And I got really into it, and as I was doing that, like I was doing it in my studio, you know. At a certain point, I realized that it was essentially writing. Like what I was doing was writing, because I was like, you know, kind of performing myself. I don't, you know, just being myself, but on a keyboard and in front of a camera. Not always with the camera, but yeah, that I was sort of like pulling stories out of these people and telling my story, and then the more people that kind of I would get involved with, the more complicated all the stories became, and at a certain point it just seemed like, wow, I'm actually writing.
I am curious to see the final work.
Don't worry. It should be something very above the personal. And like I said, the only one looking bad is me. The attention whore.